And this is how we do that. It's called stringing. You're measuring each individual drop. You're picking out several, 10, 15, 20, however many. You're getting the angle of impact of those stains, and then using yarn or string from that surface, you're taking those angles, taking the string to the angle that stain is at, and run it out into space. You're doing that for each one. And where all these strings come together, where all they start crossing, think about somebody's head being right there. That's where that stain originated from. So that can tell us how far he was from the floor and from, say, the little wall right here.
So all the times you're learning trigonometry or whatever math, you're like, I'm never going to use this in the real world. This is stupid. Well,
Thank goodness for that.
because the light bulb went on for me when we went to class. I was like, wait a minute, this is the one time that it actually works. So same thing, I think that I don't know if the traffic unit talked about it, but it's the same. They use mathematical equations to figure out accident reconstruction.
The same thing with shooting scene reconstruction. It's just a different application of it. You're still trying to get the angle of impact, the angle that it came in order to trace it back to where it originated. There's some impact stains. See these little tails on the stains? Without going into a week-long class on why that is, but that's just the way blood reacts every time. When blood comes off, and I wish those videos were, the one with the blood dripping from the wrench, it shows really good how blood reacts. When it starts dripping from that wrench, it's stretching out, and you've got a long line of blood, and then at the bottom you've got like a ball. Eventually it gets to a point to where it breaks free, and when it does, this bottom ball comes into a perfect sphere. The line that you see stretching out then snaps into two other spheres. So then, and it does this every time. So you imagine that's just dropping off. If you're applying some kind of force to it, you're making that blood, it's coming out, they're coming out in spheres, the drops, and then when they're hitting the wall, they're hitting at an angle. So then you're able to get that angle of impact and trace it back to where it originated. And we're able to do that because blood reacts that way every time. And that's just putting some strings up on those things. And then we're, same scene, able to piece it back together. That told me that this guy was laying in the bed when he got attacked. Impression evidence, we talked about that a little bit, but we can obviously collect footwear impressions. Y'all saw that from casts. We can also photograph them. Same concept. Again, you're looking at the differences in the wear pattern. I don't know what kind of shoe that is. So say we have a burglary, you've got a burglar alarm go off from a store, which is what this is from, and we get to the scene and we find this footwear impression, and then an hour later we got a guy walking down the street behind the store, and we get out with him, see what he's doing. He's got on a pair of Adidas shoes, similar pattern. What do y'all think? Might want to collect those shoes, right? At the least. He'd be a good suspect. Right? But would you have known that from that previous picture? I don't have to go back on this, but it was just a lighter version of this. You couldn't see all this detail. That's what you actually saw when you got to the scene. And that's where it's been processed. That was a little hard to see, but snow. Does that look familiar? Anybody know what kind of shoe that is? Any shoe fans in here? I'm not positive, I think it's an Air Force One, something like that. Anybody agree with that or disagree?
It is.
What about that one? Pretty similar, in two different burglaries. Maybe same guy. Maybe two guys got the same taste in shoes. Tire tread, again, same way. Photograph's almost as good as a cast if you get good photographs. Obviously, that doesn't have a lot of detail to it, but it gives us some dimensions. You can also have fingerprints that are impressions. I don't know if that one works or not. We got to blow up a van at the Forensic Academy. That's pretty neat. But then we had to process it, try to find evidence after the fact. You'd be surprised. We actually found the SIM card to the cell phone that was attached to the pipe bomb. Some good information, right? Somebody's SIM card. Along with some duct tape that was wrapped around it. Remember that chemical I told you about, processed tape with? There you go. It survived. And the body farm. That's the entrance to the body farm. Nothing special. What I found interesting was that's going back this way a little bit. And you're right at the UT Medical Center. I mean, we're in the back parking lot of the hospital. So I thought it was going to be out somewhere, out in the middle of nowhere, out in the country. But no, it's in the back parking lot of the hospital. Our main project, I guess you could say, when we were there was locating a clandestine grave where somebody's been buried, and then excavating that. In other words, digging all that up. You can't just go in there with a shovel and start scooping dirt. It's a tedious process, as you will see. We first got to find it. In this case, we use soil probes, looking for soil resistance differential. Basically, the concept is once you disturb the ground and try to put it back in, it's not going to go back in the same way you took it out. So there's going to be some difference in the resistance of the dirt. How dirt's packed, when we try to dig a hole, how hard it is, and you pack it back in there, how soft it is, and it kind of mashes down. Same thing happens. Even when it starts to settle, it's not going to be the same as the surrounding dirt that's been disturbed. So we start finding those areas where it feels different, and it actually, with those probes, you start going through and it's just barely poking in the ground, and then all of a sudden you'll hit a spot and it'll go all the way down. I mean, you almost fall over. That's obviously the spot we want to focus on. So we start marking those areas, and you can see with those flags, it kind of looks like a grave. So we decided this is probably where our body's at. So then comes the tedious process of marking it off, getting ready to start taking measurements. Every step of this process, you're taking measurements, how deep you are. You know, if you're finding pieces of evidence, where is it located at in conjunction with the surrounding area. And we're literally brushing dirt into dustpans. That dirt is going into a bucket. I don't know if I have a picture or not, but there's a guy standing over here with a sifter. Once that bucket fills up, we dump it into a sifter. He's sifting through it, looking for evidence, bones. And then we start getting down to skeletal remains. Again, every step of the process, we're photographing, we're taking measurements. You know, how deep is this? Arpad Bass. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of him or not. He's a really smart guy, a lot smarter than I am. Heard of the Casey Anthony case down in Florida. He's one of the guys that testified on the smell in the trunk of the car. He works at the Oak Ridge lab. He's highly intelligent, but he studies decomposition. More, I guess, strictly like the odors that come from. He was in the process of getting a patent when we were there on a machine that actually, he calls it the Labrador. It looks like a metal detector, but it's actually sucking up fumes. And it's sent it through a machine, whatnot, whatever he's built, and it's telling him what it's smelling. And then it can detect the decomposing body under the soil. There's our guys. Then we know we're down to the bottom of where evidence is at, and we start getting back to that hard, compacted soil. So we knew we found everything but a kneecap, I think. And they were okay with that. And then we got to bury one. So not too many people can say they dug up the body and then buried one. Legally. So that's about it. Any questions?
How long did it take to dig up the body?
2 days.
2 days?
We rushed on the second day because we were running out of time. We stopped measuring every little thing. In real life scenario, 3-4 days probably took.
At what point in the police investigation would detectives be called in? What, at what point?
Anything that that's going to take an amount of time that's beyond that of what a patrol officer could spend. Most of our cases get reported. Patrol officer goes out, they take the report, then that report comes to us and it gets assigned to a detective, and then they follow up on it the following day or the next week, whenever. As far as actually calling out somebody, like overnight or something like that, it just depends. Depends on the crime. Obviously, any major crime, they're going to call somebody out. I'm going to get called out. But burglaries, inter autos, depending on if they think there's evidence there to be processed, if they think there's a suspect maybe that needs to be talked to that they don't have the means or comfortable with interviewing, then they'll call us out. If they see there's not much evidence there to collect or process, they may handle it themselves. Our patrol guys can dust for fingerprints. Some of them are a lot more comfortable doing it than others. So sometimes it really depends on what officer it is.
Has it ever happened, like if someone kills somebody, like the whole blood splatter thing? Like has a killer or someone ever like splattered blood on purpose, like to like throw you guys off maybe, just to like?
Not here, there has not, but you can tell a difference.
You can tell?
There's a difference in, there's a lot that goes into it. You're looking at the actual size of the drops that are on there. The smaller the drops, the more force that was used. That's how you can tell the difference in somebody's been blunt force, hit in the head a couple of times, or they've been shot, and you got blood stains from a gunshot wound. Those stains are going to be really, really small. It's almost like a mist-like pattern.
And another question. I heard somewhere that to like throw cops off, like sometimes a killer will like bury a body, and then on top of the body they'll put like a dead dog or something. So it's like if you get dogs sniffing around for a dead body, like they'll cast the scent of the dog and miss the body. Is that true?
Sounds like a neat psycho book you've been reading or whatever.
Well, I heard it somewhere.
Who knows? I'm sure that could be done, yeah. I mean, because then maybe we start digging because where there's loose soil and we're getting, it's just a stupid dog, and then we move on, right? So that definitely could happen, but that's taking somebody who's got some, definitely some prior planning and psychotic episodes. So there's, I wouldn't doubt that it's out there,
There's a lot that goes into, just say a buried body, for instance. I don't know, say it comes to us as a missing person. we're not gonna say, oh, this person's missing, I bet they're buried over here. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, so if we're actually at the point of physically looking for a burial site, we got pretty good knowledge that we're gonna find it. So even if that be the case, we'd probably still keep digging. If we was to find a dollar, we'd probably still keep digging.
Because something got us to that location for some reason, right? To narrow it down that far.
And as far as other dogs sniffing, I've only been on one case where we had cadaver dogs, and yeah, they didn't work real well anyway, so.
And one last question, what's the worst part of Dalton, like crime-wise, I guess?
Crime hits everywhere, right? I mean, you know, people try to think, well, this side of town, that side of town. I mean, it depends on what kind of crimes you're talking about, right? I mean, probably the most of our calls come from the Walmart on Sugar Road, right? I mean, I don't know, there's hundreds of calls each year that come out of there just shoplifting.
I mean, if you just looked at our call volume, I mean, you're right, I mean, Walmart seems like it'd be a horrible place, I mean, crime happens there every 30 seconds, but there's so many thefts that happen there, we get a lot of reports from it.
So it kind of skews it, but I mean, it really just depends. It's all over. There's definitely certain hot spots that can happen, but it really isn't a great answer for where's the worst place in Dalton, you know what I mean? Because it can be hit or miss, and it happens in, you know, what somebody may consider the best neighborhood in Dalton is the same as the worst, you know, whatever somebody's perception is.
How accessible is it, for growth in the criminal justice field or in like policing and detective wise? Also, a follow-up question is, where do you see yourself in like 10 years? Where do you want to be?
You'll have to remind me of the second question. But as far as growth, so the problem is there's no industry standard, right? I mean, like you were saying, if you go to Sheriff's Department, you may have to start out in booking, you may go to the road. And my 2-year hiatus as a restaurant manager was because I didn't want to work the road. I don't want to be a street beat cop. Who wants to do that? I went to college, right? So, but ultimately, depending on the the jurisdiction that you're trying to get involved in, maybe in bigger cities, I mean, you'll see across the country and even maybe in the Atlanta area where there's more of a need for crime scene folks, but they'll hire people that are civilian. But the kick is that if you're a civilian, you're getting paid a lot less than a sworn person. So that's kind of a trade-off. You may not have to be an officer if you can find the right agency that's big enough, but then you will be a civilian employee and you're just not going to get paid as much. So it really just depends. It's all over. I mean, because there is no standard, right? Every department's different. And you look at Georgia, I don't know, it's like 170 counties. It's ridiculous how many counties we have in Georgia, and each sheriff's department's going to work different, and each municipality inside that is going to work different. So there's no real, set way of how you can get to be where you want to be. But like I said, for me, I didn't want to be a road officer. Not that I was above it, but it's just that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. Well, then I figured out, well, due to family and things like that, I was going to be in this area. So if I was going to do it, this is the route to go. And it just worked out. You got to be in the right place at the right time when an opening comes up. So with Dalton, you paid my dues, and I mean, obviously was on the road for 6-7 years. So and you get to see a lot and experience a lot. The one thing I would say, if anybody, no matter what it is, and this is more of a societal thing now, is you got to be able to talk to people, right? You may not be comfortable getting up in front of a class looking at a bunch of faces that you've never seen before and may never see again. Not that you've got to go do public speaking, but you got to be able to talk to people. And I think we lose that today, right? Because this is it. I mean, let me ask, who doesn't have a cell phone? The man in the back, that's what I'm talking about. The rebel. Okay. So this is communicating now, right? And this is no matter if you stay in a law enforcement job, if you stay in any job, especially law enforcement, you got to have the gift of gab and be able to talk to folks. If you're going to work a crime scene or whatever you're going to do, not just being able to talk to coworkers, but as an officer, you could be on the side of the road with somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to figure out if this person has warrants for their arrest. So we're just talking. Well, he or she may be worried because they do have warrants, and ultimately we figure it out, and we got to make sure they've got the warrant in hand, and we're shooting the bull. You got to have the gift of gab, you got to be able to talk to people. And I think somewhat, some of the younger generation now, even just commonplace, any kind of work environment, that would, you gotta be able to talk to people. You gotta get out of the cell phone, or at least be comfortable. I mean, my wife's 19-year-old cousin, would be at Snapchat or whatever, nothing against using apps, but, it's like, do you ever talk to this dude? Or what? I mean, it's all about, and y'all know what's up, so it's all about mobile devices now, which isn't a bad thing, you just can't forget how to talk to people. And remember your second question. So me, 10 years, so I've been here 12, I'll be here 22. The difference between Sam and I, he's on a city pension, I'm not. I came in after when they stopped the city pension, right? So you see that a lot across the country from a retirement standpoint. So the city pays like a deferred compensation, like 401k essentially, but there's no pension in place. So, I say retire, but I'll stop policing when I guess I'm done with it, and then I'll go do something else, right? Because I'm sure at 55, because some of the pensions, 55 you can retire and things like that, but with me, I'll just go get another job somewhere else, doing something else. So at 20, I'll have 22 years in 10 years, right? Best case scenario, what would I be doing? Good job. And hopefully be left alone to do that until I get old and decrepit, and whatever. But I don't know if that'll happen. But for me, what I want to do is what Sam's doing, and I'm able to do some of it, as a general case detective. And one of the recent homicides we had, I processed the scene with Sam. So we had to wait for the search warrant, and then I worked it with him. Because it's a lot to undertake just one person, so you need 2 or 3 sometimes, especially at big scenes, a lot of blood evidence, things like that. So hopefully that's what it'll be, because I got in when I started going to school even here, and like I said, I guess 96, it was because I liked forensic stuff. That was before CSI, and now everybody likes it, which is cool, because it is cool. It's just a matter of, I guess you got to find your way to be able to get into it, and that's, even when I was on the road, I would dust for fingerprints or do whatever I could to do those things that I enjoyed, but even if it was on a small scale versus this stuff that Sam's been trained to do. So, that's my story.
I'm gonna retire. No, probably, because I'll be eligible for retirement when I'm 49, so I'll still be young. But I'll probably get out of this, maybe teach. There's some folks that have done crime scenes for extended period of time and retired, and now they're consultants. There's larger agencies that sometimes send off case files, cold cases, whatnot, for somebody else to look at, just to get another view on it and get their opinion. And they do that for crime scenes. So, probably something I'll look at, maybe, hopefully.
What are the more common investigations that y'all do?
Property crimes. People stealing stuff.
Burglaries, thefts.
If you're in the city and you get something stolen and it's somehow could be worked, and I say worked, is it a possibility that somebody could pawn it? Do we have a potential suspect? But even thefts from houses, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, like Sam was saying, that an original report's done, and then it'll go, and then the CID supervisor every day will look over all the reports, and based on some kind of solvability factors, we'll get things assigned out. So we work a lot of thefts of just stolen properties. That's the biggest thing we probably work the most of.
Last year was a busy year for us for homicides. I think we had 4. I think we averaged less than 1, or right at 1 a year. So hopefully that's not a trend.
We got real lucky because I guess one of them was right in the county, and then the other 3. Anybody ever watched the first 48?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they stress how important it is to get people in custody within the first 48 hours, or develop a suspect or something like that. And luckily, with all 3, we were able to very quickly develop suspects. And one of them it ended up taking a week, but ultimately able to get people in custody. Some of them even within a day to 2 days.
And I think all but 1 was either captured on video surveillance or part of the movements by the suspect was captured on video surveillance.
So there's video video everywhere.
Keep that in mind.
When you're burying the dog on top of you.
Do y'all keep track of your like conviction rates and things like that?
No, I don't.
Somebody else might, from an
Yeah,
administrative
wondering.
standpoint. I mean, not conviction rates, we do talk about clearance rates from time to time, but it's not like a quota type thing. It's just, I think it's something you can look at, because if you've got a detective who has a very low clearance rate, he closes everything out, never arrests anybody, then we might have a problem, right? So I think they look at it from that standpoint, but not you're a little low here, you might need to arrest some more people, nothing like that. So.
Yeah, once we've made an arrest on a case, it's kind of out of our hands at that point.
Okay.
It goes to the district attorney's office, and it's up to them at that point to follow through with prosecution and what they decide to do with the case.
So typically, you know, if you're able to make a good case, somebody's gonna plea out, or they'll take it to trial. And so it depends. I mean, just in the 2 years that I've been a detective, only testified twice. And, or had 2 cases that went all the way to trial. And then, even just yesterday, met with an assistant district attorney for 3 hours talking about a case and how we're gonna see how we're gonna try it next month. So it just depends, but a lot of time, you're not spending a lot of time in court, because hopefully you can make a good enough case that you've proven it to where the defendant's not gonna take it to trial.
Is this a job that you need like a good coping mechanism to be in?
Yeah, it's a good question. So everybody's got a different one, right? And you hope that it's a positive, non-destructive coping mechanism, right? Because unfortunately, some people consume alcohol to cope with what they see. I've got a wife in the medical field, so it's funny because I've got a friend who's a video game programmer. He's now out in Colorado. He's been making video games since the early 2000s, and they go and they watch movies. I don't know how to describe it. More, I don't know, intellectual movies, maybe, right? And even ones that wouldn't go to a theater, you'd have to go to a special theater to watch it, right? So the slapstick, stupid comedies, you know, that they would, I guess, turn their nose up to. But my wife and I, you know, I'd go to that just to not have to deal with the real world. You know what I'm saying? So, and her in the medical field, dealing with babies or people that are brought in into an emergency room situation, things like that, or us seeing dead bodies, things like that. So for me to just kind of watch something that means nothing is an all right way to cope, right? It's positive. So I think you got to be able to cope, because they would turn their nose up at that movie, but for us, it's just like, well, you don't know what the real world is. You don't see what the evils of society do. So you definitely have to. So somebody's got to find their own way. Some people talk to folks about it, some people whatever, but unfortunately, you do. You've got to be able to have a scene where you've shown up, and even if it wasn't a brutal murder, it should just be somebody that a family member died, right? You've got to be able to talk to them, console them, and then turn around, get in the car, and go answer a call where somebody's complaining about the neighbor's dog taking a dump on their yard. You know what I'm saying? So you've got to be able to switch gears that fast in your mind to that, and then go run to help out another officer who's fighting with somebody. And you've got to be able to do those things, and at the end of the day, keep your sanity. So I think everybody's different on how they deal with things.
So you do see a lot of horrific stuff, or is it kind of mostly just, is it like occasional horrific stuff?
It really depends, right? So, I mean, you can go a whole, I mean, if anybody ever has a chance, and you can do it as a citizen, you know, you can go do a ride along with a cop. And it'll either be the most boring thing you've ever done in your entire life, or it could be, on occasion, filled with adrenaline. Going to help people or whatever it is. But it could very well be
Could
the
make
most.
you rethink your major.
Yeah, so it depends. So if we only have, thankfully, 4 murders in Dalton last year, then there aren't that many scenes. But even accidental things where a 2-year-old's run over and you show up at the house, or you show up and a lady on a hill and we showed up and the truck had run over her and she's laying there. And she's spitting up pieces of her lung, and she's trying to live, right? But you're there with her, and you're waiting for EMS to get there, you're talking to her, and you see those things. But that's just kind of part of the job, that you're gonna see things that you may not wanna see, but you gotta deal with it. Somebody's gotta do it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that's, it's a silly movie thing, maybe a coping mechanism for me, but I don't know.
But you try to separate work and home. And I know You probably hear that about most jobs, but it's probably one of the things I try to leave. My wife gets on to me all the time about, tell me what you did at work. You really want to hear about the body I just had to deal with, that's been there 2 weeks? I don't think you want to hear about that, so I don't tell her about that kind of stuff. I might tell her I had to investigate a death today, or something like that, but she knows though, because I come home from something like that, I mean, it reeks, and I'm taking my clothes off in the garage because I don't want to carry it in the house. It's tough sometimes, sure, because we see some things that are pretty gruesome. Like I said, not necessarily a murder, but, I mean, just think about going to a house that's been closed up and somebody's not heard from somebody in 2 weeks, and they've been dead that long. It sucks. But somebody's got to do it. And when I put in for this job, I rose my hand and said, I'll do it, because I have to. By no means do I enjoy it, but I've gotten used to it, I guess you could say. I get laughs out of the patrol guys that are over there, doing that, and I'm laughing at them, because, this might be the third one this week I've dealt with. Just,
Yeah, I guess just like anything else, you gotta find, because even when y'all get out of here, or even in your own life now, you got stressors, right? Things that you don't want to deal with, so you gotta cope with it, right? Whatever it is. Or whatever job you got, or wherever you do go, you don't like your boss, you don't like this, whatever, you gotta be able to deal with it. So, kind of in the same way, so everybody's gotta do it, and like I said, hopefully you find a positive way to do it, because there's obviously many people out there that use coping mechanisms that aren't, good for them and their families.
I just have one more question.
Yeah.
Would you say that this kind of job has a high burnout rate, like guys that just can't do it after a certain time?
Yeah, I wish I could throw some numbers out there to you, but I can't. I know Dalton's got a pretty low turnover, but probably nationwide, things can get, turnover rates can be pretty high.